Chapter 61 Scald. She grabbed the clothes in front of her and fanned them while she ran to the sink to fill a cup of cold water with her cup and poured it on her clothes. It was a dress, and she couldn't turn it off to check. Seeing how painful she was, that woman curled her lips and said fawnily, "Oh my God, a new intern, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that." Laura Green looked up at her. If she didn't on purpose, that would be fine. However, we haven't even touched each other yet. Why did you pour coffee first? What do you mean? We met each other just now. Are you saying that I intentionally made a fool out of you? Isn't it? The commotion between the two of them quickly attracted quite a few onlookers. The female staff member pulled Laura Green out of tea house and said to the people around her with an innocent expression, "You guys, come and help me judge the situation. Just now, I made a cup of coffee, and when I turned around, I accidentally bumped into her. But she said that I did that on purpose. But I apologized. If I didn't apologize, would you say that I intentionally wanted to kill you?" Laura was annoyed looking at her face. She did something wrong but pretended to be innocent. That was unlucky. There were also people around who started to smooth things over and help to negotiate, but because she was a temporary worker, everyone helped that female employee. "Miss Green, don't be so angry. Our office has always been harmonious, and no one is going to intentionally target you." "That's right, it's not such a big deal. Annie says she's sorry, but just laugh it off and let it go." Looking at the crowd, Laura Green knew that even if she explained that they two didn't crash and Annie did it on purpose, no one would believe it. Or perhaps, even they trusted Laura, they would still choose to help Annie rather than an intern like her. After giving Annie a cold look, she turned around and walked out of the crowd into the washroom. She slowly lifted off her clothes. Her lower abdomen was red and swollen. At this moment, someone walked in through the door and astonished by the injury on her stomach. She walked to her and said, "Why is it so serious? Laura, you have to go to the hospital." She also felt that it would get serious if she didn't go to the hospital. She endured the pain and came out of the washroom to look for her immediate supervisor to take a leave of absence. When she heard that Laura was going to the hospital, Annie replied disdainfully from afar, "So delicate. Why are you going to the hospital? It is just water." She said in cold voice, "That's boiling water." "Aren't you still separated by a layer of clothes?" When the female staff who came out of the washroom heard that, she stepped forward and said, "Annie, there's a blister on her stomach. It's pretty serious." Annie looked at her coldly. "Zoe, it's none of your business. I know you don't like me, but don't be exaggerating." "Why am I exaggerating? I saw it with my own eyes. The lady's stomach was burned by you. You should take responsibility." Just then, the manager's office door opened and Tom walked out. He said unhappily, "What's going on? Why are you making such a ruckus during work hours? You guys want to be fired?" Annie pouted and walked to Tom's side. "Tom, I really can't take on this job. An old employee like me was pushed around by a newbie. What the hell is this?" Annie then repeated what she had said at the entrance of the tea house once again. Without waiting for Tom to say anything, Zoe walked over to his side and said, "Anyway, let Laura go to the hospital first. Her stomach is already soaked in water. If she doesn't go, it will get worse. We can't abuse her just because she's a temporary worker, can we?" Annie took a step forward and ordered, "Zoe, what do you mean? Are you not clear whether or not you have bullied her? It's you did the wrong thing. Why are you so arrogant? Oh my God, is there still any rule? When I splashed her with water earlier, I've already apologized. She was the one who slandered me first, saying that we didn't touch each other. I splashed her on purpose, and she was targeting me. She has just entered this company. It's only the second day since she started working. What's the need for her to target you?" Tom was displeased and berated them. "What are you two doing? Both of you shut up." He walked up to her and said, "Laura, if your injuries are serious, you should go to the hospital first." Laura Green turned her head and looked at Annie. God knows who did the wrong thing. She went to the table, picked up her bag, and left. Arriving at the hospital, the doctor examined it and said that it was a mild scalded wound with some edema. Fortunately, her clothes were plump, and the water that was splashed on her gave her a cushion. She then splashed her wounds with cold water in time, otherwise it would have been very severe. The doctor gave her some medicine and wrapped the wound in gauze. She paid the bill and left the hospital. Just as she was about to come out from the emergency surgery, she saw William Walton running in from the entrance of the emergency hall. He immediately saw Laura Green and came to her side. "How are you? What are you doing here? I'm asking you, how are your injuries?" She waved the payment slip in front of his eyes. "It's nothing important. The doctors have already dealt with it for me." "Which doctor handled it for you?" "Emergency surgery." William Walton walked over and asked the doctor about her situation. Confirming that it was a mild injury and that it had indeed been treated well, he became more at ease. He breathed a sigh of relief, walked to her side, and said unhappily, "Why didn't you call me when this happened? You're not a doctor, but I'm your boss." She laughed. "Then may I ask the boss, is the injury that I suffered during work hours a work injury? Can I be covered by insurance?" William Walton looked at her and sighed helplessly. Why she was still in the mood to make a joke? He was terrified. They got out of the hospital and into the car. She was just about to fasten her seatbelt when she let out a cry of pain. William Walton looked at her. What's wrong? It hurts. Go to the back seat. Getting out of the car, she walked to the back seat and he sat in the driver's seat. He looked at her worriedly and said bitterly, which employee is so blind that she can't even hold a cup properly? How could she deal with her job well? Crap. It's a senior employee. Her name is Annie. She had already apologized to me, saying that she did not do it on purpose. He looked at her in the rearview mirror. So, you just said it's okay? Twist. Chapter 62. The third young master of the Count's family. She hesitated for a moment before replying. How is that possible? She did it on purpose. William Walton turned around to look at her, his voice raised by a few decibels. She did this on purpose? She smiled warmly and said, You're the boss. If I tell you these, would it seem like I'm making a snitch? Cut the crap, what's going on? I don't know why, but two of us were to pour water in the tea house and we turn around to leave at the same time. It would be impossible for us to touch each other at that distance. However, I feel that her coffee has already spilled onto me. William Walton angrily tapped the horn on the steering wheel. Why aren't you calling me when someone is bullying you? Why should I call you? Like a primary school student who let my parents help me beat up the bad guy? Besides, if you came around, I'll lose my face. If you came down, everyone would know that there is a relationship between you and me. I don't want to be constantly pointed out by others during the period I work here. So, you will suffer this injustice? I will find out the reason why she's against me, and then I will retaliate against her. Heh, I don't believe it. It's fine. That's what I plan to do anyway. William Walton laughed and did not say anything else. She thought about something, but, how did you know? I called you. A woman called Zoe answered. She said that your phone was lost in the tea house and that you were scalded. You went to the hospital. But I didn't tell her which hospital I was in. Aren't normal people go to the nearest hospital? She smiled. William Walton did not send her back to the company, but instead brought her back to the Walton family. When they arrived at the entrance of the Walton family, she refused to get out of the car with a cold expression. When William Walton let her get off the car the third time, she said stubbornly, Either send me to the company or send me home. In short, I definitely won't stay here. Your family is here too. Where can you go? Laura rolled at him. Are you planning to keep using this weakness to ridicule me for the rest of my life? Yep, I'll laugh at you for the rest of your life. My whole life? She looked at him. Did he know how long life was? He was not in her plans. I want to go back to the company or send me home. William Walton turned his head and stared at her. The two of them stared at each other for more than 10 minutes, before he backed away and left the Walton family again, bringing her back to the big city home. It's almost 4 p.m. You don't need to go back to the company today. Have a good rest. All right, he took her upstairs. When she entered the room, she seemed to recall something and asked, Oh, right, I heard that these clothes are very expensive. I never go shopping at the street market. Sigh, then I can't return this shirt to you. It's already been stained by the coffee and can't be washed. If you want to claim compensation, then go and find that Annie. I don't have any money. William Walton lovingly rubbed her head for a while, then looked at her. All right, stop talking, go change your clothes, and have some rest. I'll come and see you again tonight. He walked out. Laura Green said, You don't need to come and see me tonight. I can take care of myself. However, William Walton ignored her. After he had left, she suddenly remembered that she had forgotten the important thing to ask. She patted her brain. Did she lose the brain when she was together with William Walton? William Walton returned to his office and called Daniel in. Find an excuse and ask the training department's Zoe to come to my office. Don't let others know. All right. Daniel was puzzled. These 2 days, why did William Walton treat the training department with so much concern? 10 minutes later, Zoe appeared in his office and said respectfully, Hello, Mr. Walton. I'm Zoe. Do you know why I called you up here? Zoe was very nervous. Of course, she didn't know. She didn't think that she would have the chance to directly meet the CEO in her life. I'm sorry, Mr. Walton. I don't know, really. Do you know what happened to the intern who was thrown coffee in your department today? Zoe was puzzled. How did he know about this? Yes. Tell me about it. Zoe took a deep breath and recounted the entire process. William Walton raised his eyebrows and said, So are you sure it was Annie who spilled some Laura Green? I didn't see it with my own eyes. At that time, it was only the two of them in tea house. Oh, then why do you think Annie threw coffee at her? Zoe hesitated for a moment. Mr. Walton, I'm not sure. You can tell me about your analysis. I want to know why Laura was bullied. Hearing that, Zoe immediately understood that Mr. Walton and Laura knew each other. Zoe said, These few days, someone in the office said that Tom had arranged the young lover that he had just found to enter the company. He was a temporary trainer, and everyone was guessing who she is. Today, someone saw Laura wearing an expensive new dress, so she surmised that she was his lover. I think that's why Annie bullied her. William Walton raised his eyebrows. So it turned out to be because of the clothes he bought that had caused this disaster. Why did Annie bully her? Zoe exhaled. Mr. Walton, Annie is also one of Tom's lovers. Everyone in the office knows about this, and it's precise because of this that everyone would stand on Annie's side and help her against Laura. Everyone is just afraid that Annie would do something bad behind their backs. William Walton laughed coldly. Tom was a dandy. Then why did you choose to help her? Because I know that Laura is not the lover of Tom. Oh, how do you know? When the 4 temporary training lecturers came to the office, I already knew who the lover of in total was. Because the last time I went shopping, I accidentally saw Tom buying bags for that girl. Then why did you dare to help her tenderly? Because I don't like Annie. Give me the reason. Annie came to the company later than me. Originally, I was her master, but after that, because she is Tom's lover, she crawled even faster than me. With Tom's help, she often bullied me in the office. William Walton looked at her. It looks like this woman can indeed be used, he said in a cold and mysterious voice. All right, during this period, if anyone bullies Laura, come and report to me. As a reward, you will become the supervisor. Zoe was startled. Becoming a supervisor? She upgraded? Yes, Mr. Walton. Find evidence that Annie made a mistake on official matters, beat her up, and reasonably expel her. Do not let anyone contact this with Laura Green. Zoe was pleasantly surprised, even knowing that Mr. Walton was using her to protect Laura. She felt that it was great to be able to expel Annie. Yes. All right, go down and give me Laura's phone. You are free to go. Zoe walked a few steps as something occurred to her. She turned her head and asked, Mr. Walton, this afternoon, you were the man who called Laura? What? You didn't see the caller ID when you answered the phone in the afternoon? Zoe felt embarrassed. The caller ID isn't your name. What does it show? The 3rd young master of the Count's family. William Walton was startled. The 3rd young master of the Count's family? Chapter 63. She will marry me. After Zoe went, William smiled. He remembered what he had seen on her phone before, the title of Principal's silly son. He couldn't help but shake his head. This woman. Not long later, Daniel knocked on the door and entered, handing over her phone to him. Mr. Walton, this was brought up by Zoe. She said it's what you wanted. He took the phone and said to Daniel, from today onwards investigate Tom. I want to use his weakness to take him down. All right, William Walton. He put the phone back in his pocket and stood up. I'm leaving first. Call me if something happens. All right. William Walton went downstairs and drove to Laura Green's house. At that moment, she was returning from the market with vegetables and meat. When she reached the entrance, she saw Nick Anderson from afar. Seeing her, Nick Anderson quickly walked over. Laura, I've let you down. Brother, why are you saying this? I already said it. Don't say you're sorry. But yesterday... She interrupted him. It's not you who took them to see me. Besides, they're them. You're you. Then why didn't you pick up the phone today? I'm busy. Girl, you don't let me stop worrying. I thought you were angry at me. Come, give me a warm hug to calm my wounded heart. As he spoke, he stepped forward and pulled her into his arms. She cried out in pain. It hurts. Nick Anderson immediately released her. What's wrong? She took 2 steps back, put down the vegetables, and placed her hand on her stomach. Bro, you're too barbaric. I'm sick now. Nick Anderson's heart tightened. What's going on? Let me take a look, she said. All right, brother, don't get too agitated. I was just accidentally scalded by hot water today. Applied medicine and wrapped it with gauze. It won't hurt that much if I don't touch it. You are an adult. How could you be so careless? Did you go to the hospital, or did he just randomly do things by yourself? I went to the hospital. While the 2 of them were talking, William Walton's car had already arrived. He got out of the car and walked over to them. The moment he saw him, Nick Anderson's face turned cold. How did this man know this place? Could it be? Had he been here before? William Walton walked to Laura and acted as if he did not see anyone else. He asked, Are you better now? Nodding her head, she replied, Yes. Nick Anderson turned to another side, pulling Laura Green behind him, and looked at William Walton. How could he know that Laura was injured? It seemed that Laura was still interacting with him regardless of what he had said. The 2 men looked at each other. Laura was so awkward. She knew that her brother disliked William Walton. Brother? You go upstairs first, Nick Anderson said in a cold voice. She knew he was talking to her. William Walton smirked. Mr. Anderson, it shouldn't be appropriate for you to order Miss Green like this, should you? Nick Anderson laughed coldly. How I speak to her is my problem. It has nothing to do with Mr. Walton. She's a woman I like. Do you think it's none of my business? Nick Anderson clenched his teeth and looked at him with hostility. Then Mr. Walton will be disappointed. She will not marry a member of the Walton family. I'm afraid it's not up to you or your Anderson family. William Walton smiled charmingly. She will marry me. Mr. Walton, you are way too arrogant. Even though I come from the Anderson family, she will listen to me. As for the reason, doesn't William Walton know it well? William Walton laughed coldly. Just because you are his illegitimate brother? Nick Anderson, the person who I think is arrogant is you, right? Legitimate or not is not up to you. William Walton said as his gaze grew serious once more. When your Anderson family is extravagant, happy, she was alone. When she needed family, the Anderson family was her enemy. Now she doesn't need a family. You jumped out and pretended to be a good brother. How dare you? Nick Anderson, as a human being, you can't be too despicable, so I might as well tell you the truth. You are not the one who in charge of her business. Nick Anderson clenched his fist. Regardless of whether or not this matter was announced or not, all of her body is covered with the blood of the Anderson family. That's unquestionable. Enough. She interrupted the conversation between the two. She took a deep breath and asked, "Are you done yet?" She walked in front of William Walton. "William Walton, I thank you for your help these past few days, but I hope you can remember that my original intentions have not changed. I indeed will not marry you." Once she finished speaking, Nick Anderson looked at William Walton with a mocking smile. After looking at William Walton guiltily for a moment, she turned around to look at Nick Anderson. "And you, brother. I admit that you are my brother, but that does not mean that I will listen to everything you say. You are just my brother, but I will not let you change my life. I hate your family, so you don't need to say anything more. Never say that I have the Anderson family's blood on me. If possible, I will change my blood, even if it hurts." After she finished speaking, she walked over to the bag and picked it up. "You two, I'm not feeling well, so I won't be accompanying you. You can keep talking. Goodbye." She went straight into the building and went upstairs. Returning home, she threw the bag by the door, walked to the sofa, and sat down, covering her forehead with her hand. How could they meet each other again? The scene just now was too shocking. I was afraid they would start to fight. 5 minutes later, the doorbell suddenly rang. She was still in a daze, but when she heard the doorbell, she became slightly nervous. She walked over and looked through the peephole. It was from William Walton. She opened the door and looked around. William Walton walked in. "Stop looking. I'm alone." She wondered, "My brother left? Or do you want him to come up with me? Then why didn't you leave?" William Walton turned around and looked at him obliquely. "You hate me so much?" She gently bit her lips. William Walton took out her phone and handed it over to her. "From now on, you are not allowed to reject me in front of outsiders, especially when he is Nick Anderson. If you're afraid of losing face, then don't look for me again. What I said just now is true." He looked at her warmly and said, "I've said it before. We have a long way to go in the future. You may regret. I'm afraid that you will want to find a mouse hole because of your shame." Her face was slightly red. This man couldn't be ridiculing her for what happened last night, right? As she was thinking, he asked with a serious expression, "What's Nick Anderson's name in your phone?" Chapter 64. "It's for you." Laura was stunned for a moment. Let me ask you, what name did you set for Nick Anderson on your phone?" She pursed her lips. "Why you ask that?" "I'm curious if you're only giving a nickname to the man you hate. After all, I'm not very satisfied with the name of the Count's third young master." "Laura," she swallowed her saliva. Did you just peek at my phone?" William Walton did not make a sound but stared at her face. With that, she pursed her lips and said, "Big rich brother." William Walton tilted his head and sneered. "What are you smiling at? This name isn't that much better than mine." Feeling awkward for a moment, she said, "If you have nothing else to do, then go back earlier. I'm sick now, and I can't take care of you." "You are right, I'm not busy at all, so I won't plan to go early. After all, you are sick right now, so I have to take care of you. I don't need someone to take care of me." "You don't have to say that," he said, pointing at the food on the floor in front of the door. "Are you going to cook? Otherwise, will you starve to death?" She looked at him with displeasure. "It sounds like an argument." "I'm unhappy. Can I be emotional?" "You can." William Walton calmly looked at her. "In any case, since I had a crush on you, you can do whatever you want, and I won't blame you." She blushed. Their words were so embarrassing. How could he remain calm? He is William Walton, the legendary man in our city, isn't he? Could it be that the person she knew was a fake William Walton? Laura Green ignored him, walked over, picked up the food bag, and walked towards the kitchen. William Walton replied, "There's no need to cook more. I was angered to the point that I was almost full, and I can't eat too much." Who said that they wouldn't get into trouble with her? It seemed that he was the kind of person who said one thing then did another. Going to the kitchen, she simply made some pasta. She did not have much appetite either. They sat by the small table and began to eat. She took 2 bites, looked at him, tried to say something, but did not speak. William Walton quickly finished the pasta and looked at her. "What do you want to say?" She swallowed the noodles in her mouth. "How do you know what I'm going to say something?" "You had a guilty face. I can tell from your expression that you have something to say. Since I finished eating anyway, just be honest." "I don't feel guilty at all. I just want to ask you, are you targeting the Anderson family?" "Yes." He raised his eyebrows. "Did that Nick Anderson tell you?" "It's not him. It's something I heard from another person." "Why did you do that?" "There was no reason. Walton's family and the Anderson family were never on good terms from the start, and I have already disliked them for a long time." That was the truth. However, the Walton family and Anderson family's conflict isn't something that can be resolved in a day or two. Before this, the 2 companies have never targeted each other, so this time, it is you who attacked the Anderson family unilaterally, right? Do you care about that? No, I'm just curious about why you suddenly decided to do such a thing. If there's a reason, it's for you. Was it really because of her? I want to let you see the true face of the Anderson family. What, true face? William Walton pursed his lips. Why are you asking so much? Just wait and see. The next morning, she came to the company and cleaned her desk before going to pour herself a glass of water. When she came out of the tea house, they happened to meet Annie, who had just walked in. Annie looked at her, then walked in front of her with her hands folded in front of her. Ah, the young people these days are truly amazing. To be lazy and not work because of a little injury, they would unjustly accuse others. Indeed, I can't be innocent anymore. The expression on her face was calm as she walked past Annie, pretending she didn't see her. Annie was so annoyed by being ignored by a temporary worker. She went back to her desk and threw her bag on the table, looking coldly at Laura Green. My dear friends, today I also want to rest from work for a day. If anyone wants to make an accident when I go to a tea house, I beg to be splashed with water. A few people around her echoed her words and chuckled. Annie, forget it. Why are you getting angry with a little girl? Annie shook her head. After living for almost 30 years, I can encounter anything. To be honest, I feel disgusted with this world. Laura Green took out a few invoices from her bag, walked in front of Annie and placed them on the table. With a calm voice, she said, Annie, this is the invoice for the diagnosis, treatment, and medical fees that I tested in the hospital yesterday. Since my injuries were caused by you, you no longer have the means to feel pain for me, but this fee can't be borne by me alone. Annie slowly stood up. Laura, are you sick? Why should I pay for the money for your treatment? Then why should I remain silent after being hurt by you for no reason, and bear the cost by myself? Who did I offend? You deserved it. You should be careful when you walk. Annie, don't think that just because you are a senior worker, so you can casually bully others. Yes, I am a temporary worker. But because I am a temporary worker, I'm not afraid of you. If you do not want to bear the cost that should be borne by you, then I can only go to the company and sue you. I want to see, at the end of the matter, who is the one suffering. In the end, I am only a temporary worker. In the worst case, I will not work in Walton Group anymore. Annie gritted her teeth as she stared at her Laura Green. She probably didn't think that she would run into such a situation. Also, Laura Green raised her eyebrows, turned around and walked in front of her desk. She picked up her water cup and poured it on Annie's body without a trace of politeness. But that was warm water, not hot. Annie still let out a scream. Are you crazy? She shook her clothes and gave her a gentle push. Standing still, she said in all seriousness, Earlier, you asked for it yourself. Now that I'm helping you, why are you so angry? You, Annie pointed at her. She raised her hand and swept Annie's hand away. Annie, listen carefully. You should be glad that I'm fine today. Today, I only hit back at you with warm water. Also, my outfit yesterday was a new product for the season of Chanel. Coffee from you destroyed one of my clothes, yet I didn't let you compensate. That was already giving you a lot of faces. It's best if you don't act too arrogantly about this. Otherwise, I don't mind fighting to the end with you. Chapter 65. In this way, we will be even. Annie looked at her warmly with an unconvinced expression. Just then, Tom and Zoe walked in. Seeing Tom, Annie immediately left her seat and walked to the front of Tom in total with a wronged expression. Tom, I really can't handle this job anymore. She is so arrogant and bullied me. As she spoke, she stomped her feet in anger. Tom frowned. What's the matter again? She came to me for medical fees and even splashed water all over me. I didn't do it on purpose yesterday, and I apologize too. Why did she do this to me today? Her voice was cold. Weren't you the one in the office just now begging everyone to throw their tantrums at you? It was you who said it, and now I helped you fulfill your wish. Why do you blame me now? Annie, you can't be so unreasonable. This is our company, not your home. Laura, shut up, Annie shouted. Tom frowned. Enough. What's the matter with you two? This has been going on since yesterday. Stop fighting with each other. It was her problem. Before she came, our office had always been very peaceful, Annie said as she looked at Laura. At this time, Tom also set his gaze on her. Before Tom said something, Zoe said, Who said that the entire office has always been harmonious? Annie, you have always been arrogantly bullying everyone. We are angry, but we have no choice but to compliment you because you are the boss. What kind of harmony is this? Zoe, stop with your nonsense. When did I do that? What's more, what right do I have to bully you? You've always been doing this. As for the reason, other than contract workers, does anyone else not know about it? The office instantly quieted down. Tom knew that it would affect him if this matter continued. He glanced at Zoe sideways. All right, everybody goes back to work. Laura, go back to your desk. I have something to announce. Annie pulled her wrist when Laura was about to go. Tom, so, do you mean that she didn't wrong? Laura said calmly. Take the invoice and give it to me. I will give you money as compensation. Also, when I come to the company tomorrow, I will give you the invoice for my clothes. You should do the same thing, then we are even. After she finished speaking, Annie immediately fell silent. Tom said, If the two of you continue to make trouble, both of you, get out. Annie gave a cold snort and let her go, returning to her seat. Then she returned to her desk and sat down. Tom stood in the middle of the office and said with a serious expression, Everyone, attention please. I have something to announce. Just a moment ago, I received a notification from the personnel department. From today onwards, Zoe will be promoted to the supervisor of the training department. If anyone has any problems in the future, go and find her to solve the problem. If she can't arrange the matter, she will talk to me. Hearing the news, everyone in the office immediately applauded. Zoe smiled to everyone. From now on, I hope we can work together happily. Please tell me if you have any questions. Annie was furious. She flung her brush into the corner of the table. Zoe turned her head to look at Laura and smiled with pursed lips. She smiled too. However, she was a little puzzled. She felt that Zoe seemed to be very nice to her. But why? When it was time for lunch, everyone left one by one. Laura carried her food and prepared to leave as well. Before she stood up, Amy walked over and said to her, "Laura, let's go and eat together." She quickly put down the box of food that she hadn't picked up. "I still have something to read. Why don't you go first?" "No problem, I'll wait for you." Laura standing up, she said, "Then why don't we go eat first? I'll come back later and continue working." "Sure." Amy casually held her arm. When she reached the door of the office, she did not forget to look back at the bag under her table. What should she do? When they arrived at the employee dining hall, she quickly ordered fast food. Seeing that she was eating so quickly, Amy laughed. "Why are you eating so fast? Be careful." "No problem, I always eat fast." She quickly finished eating, looked at her watch, and said to Amy, "My apologies, I need to hurry up and go upstairs. After read the documents, I still have other things to do." Seeing that she was truly anxious, Amy nodded his head, then quickly go. There were only a few people in the office. Picking up the box, she went by elevator and stairs alternatively and got to the 36th floor. Arriving at the door to William Walton's office, she knocked on the door. William Walton's cold voice came from inside. "Come in." Laura Green pushing open the door and entering, William Walton's face was cold as he gestured at his watch. "I thought you weren't going to feed me again today." Laura felt embarrassed. "I'm sorry, my colleague just called me to a restaurant to eat, but I don't have any excuse to refuse, so I had no choice but to eat with her before coming up. So, I'm not even the one you care most in terms of eating?" She opened the lunchbox and changed the topic. "I made spicy pho today, but I forgot to ask if you ate something spicy." "Don't worry." She clapped her hands warmly. "That's great. Come over and have a taste. This is my specialty." William Walton got up and with a cold expression walked over. "How's your wound today?" "It won't hurt even if I don't touch it. It was not serious, so it should be fine soon." "Don't say things like that. You're not a doctor. You need to be careful in taking care of yourself. In a place like this where you can't see, if it breaks, you'll suffer greatly." "Got it." She looked at him and smiled faintly. It had been a long time since anyone had cared about her since her mother had left. Halfway through his meal, William Walton suddenly heard someone knocking on the door. A burst of nervousness arose in her heart as she slowly stood up and looked at him. William Walton looked towards the door and calmly asked, "Who?" "Mr. Walton, it's me." Secretary Daniel's voice came from outside the door. She whispered, "What do we do? What do we do?" William Walton looked at her nervous appearance and smiled sinisterly. "Give me a kiss. I'll think of a way for you." "Hey," she whispered, staring at him. "Otherwise I'll let the secretary in. When he goes out and tells others that you were here, it won't be a matter that I can meddle in." "You..." William Walton turned his face to the side and tapped his cheek. "I won't make things difficult for you. You can also kiss my cheek."